The scene is almost a cliché, yet it plays out with startling frequency in countless variations across the globe. A man, unassuming in his worn clothes, steps into an environment where appearances are meticulously curated, where value is often measured by the glint of chrome and the sheen of polished marble. He is there, like anyone else, to conduct business, to explore possibilities, perhaps even to fulfill a long-held dream. But before he can utter a single word, before his intentions can be articulated, he is judged, he is categorized, he is dismissed. This isn't just a story about a car dealership. It's a stark, unvarnished mirror reflecting the insidious nature of prejudice and discrimination, particularly when cloaked in the subtle, often unconscious biases of socioeconomic class and superficial judgment. It's a narrative that forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about how quickly we form opinions, how readily we stereotype, and the profound, often costly consequences of those snap judgments. Today, we're dissecting a classic tale, one that resonates deeply because it exposes a universal human flaw, the tendency to equate outer appearance with inner worth, or more pragmatically, with purchasing power. He wore old clothes to the dealership. They ignored him, but he bought the most expensive car. This isn't just a catchy headline. It's a profound case study in the dynamics of prejudice and discrimination. It's a story that unfolds not with grand, overt acts of malice, but with the quiet, almost invisible slights, the averted gazes, the dismissive tones, the assumptions made in the blink of an eye. And it's these subtle manifestations of bias that are often the most pervasive and the most challenging to address. They operate beneath the surface, shaping our interactions and dictating opportunities in ways we often fail to acknowledge, let alone understand. Let's imagine our protagonist. We'll call him Arthur. Arthur isn't trying to make a statement. He's simply living his life. Perhaps he's an inventor, a retired engineer, a successful but frugal entrepreneur, or someone who simply prefers comfort over flash. His clothes are practical, perhaps a bit faded, certainly not brand new designer wear. A well-worn pair of jeans, a comfortable, slightly stretched sweater, sensible shoes. Nothing ostentatious, nothing screaming wealth. He steps out of his unassuming vehicle, perhaps an older model sedan, well-maintained but certainly not a luxury car, and walks towards the glittering glass doors of Prestige Motors, a dealership renowned for its high-end vehicles. Each car on display, from the sleek sports coupes to the opulent SUVs, carries a price tag that would make most people gasp. The showroom itself is a symphony of chrome, leather, and polished floors, permeated by the faint, intoxicating scent of new car. Arthur is not naive. He knows how the world works. He understands that appearances matter, especially in an environment like this. But he also holds a quiet confidence, born not from arrogance, but from a clear understanding of his own capabilities and intentions. He's not there to browse or kick tires idly. He's there to buy a car, a specific car, one he has researched extensively, one that meets his exacting standards. He has the means, the desire, and the decision already made. All he needs is a salesperson to facilitate the transaction. He steps inside, the automatic doors gliding open with a gentle hiss, revealing a cavernous space bathed in artificial light, making every vehicle shine like a jewel. Several sales associates are visible, impeccably dressed in sharp suits and ties, their smiles practiced, their postures professional. They are engaged with other customers, or perhaps standing idly, chatting amongst themselves, or tapping away at computers behind sleek desks. Arthur takes a moment to absorb the atmosphere, the hushed murmurs of negotiations, the occasional burst of laughter from a successful sale. He looks around, taking in the exquisite machinery, his gaze eventually settling on a particularly striking model, a limited edition, high-performance vehicle that sits proudly on a rotating platform in the center of the showroom, almost like a sculpture. He waits. He doesn't rush, doesn't demand attention. He allows his eyes to wander, giving the sales team ample opportunity to notice him. A minute passes. Then 2. A salesperson, a young man with slicked back hair and a nervous energy, walks past him, his eyes skimming over him without truly registering him. He walks towards a couple dressed in designer activewear, offering them a wide, enthusiastic greeting and an immediate greeting. Arthur, meanwhile, remains unnoticed, a phantom in a room full of potential buyers.
This is where the first subtle cut of discrimination occurs. It's not a shout, not an insult. It's the absence of recognition, the silent judgment that deems someone unworthy of attention. The salespeople, through their trained eyes and perhaps unconscious biases, have already made a snap assessment. Arthur, in his old clothes, doesn't fit the profile of a serious buyer at Prestige Motors. He doesn't look like he belongs. He doesn't look like he has the money. And in the high-stakes world of luxury car sales, time is money, and attention is a finite resource to be allocated judiciously to those most likely to convert into a commission. Let's pause the narrative here and delve into the intricate psychology at play. What happened in those first few minutes is a perfect illustration of implicit bias. Implicit bias refers to the attitudes or stereotypes that affect our understanding, actions, and decisions in an unconscious manner. These biases are activated involuntarily and without an individual's awareness or intentional control. They are pervasive and robust, often operating even in individuals who are consciously committed to egalitarian principles. In Arthur's case, the implicit bias is largely rooted in socioeconomic classism and appearance-based stereotyping. From a very young age, we are exposed to countless messages, both explicit and subtle, about what wealth looks like, how successful people dress, and what kind of car signifies status. Media, advertising, social interactions all contribute to building a mental database of associations. Expensive clothes equal wealth, success, and purchasing power. Old, plain clothes equal modest means, perhaps even poverty, and certainly not the kind of client who walks into a luxury car dealership with a serious intention to buy. The human brain is a remarkable pattern-matching machine. It constantly seeks to categorize and simplify information to make sense of a complex world. This cognitive shortcut, while efficient for survival in ancient times, often leads to erroneous and harmful judgments in modern society. When a salesperson sees Arthur in his unassuming attire, their brain, drawing from this vast database of learned associations, quickly categorizes him. Not a high-priority customer. This isn't necessarily a conscious, malicious thought. It's an automatic, almost reflexive categorization that then dictates subsequent behavior. The averted gaze, the lack of greeting, the prioritization of other seemingly more promising clients. This is further compounded by the pressures of the sales environment. Salespeople are often driven by commission. Their livelihood depends on closing deals, and closing big deals on luxury cars yields significant returns. This creates a powerful incentive to quickly identify and focus on clients perceived as having the highest likelihood of making a purchase. When time is a commodity and every interaction carries the potential for a sale or a waste of time, the brain's shortcut mechanism goes into overdrive. The risk of misjudgment is high, but the perceived efficiency often outweighs the potential for error in the salesperson's immediate calculation. They are, in a sense, optimizing for what they believe is the highest probability of success, even if that optimization is flawed by unconscious bias. Moreover, there's the phenomenon of confirmation bias at play, even before the interaction begins. Once an initial judgment is made, e.g., this person isn't a serious buyer, the individual making that judgment will unconsciously seek out and interpret information in a way that confirms their initial belief. So, if Arthur were to ask a question, a salesperson already biased might interpret his question as naive or merely curious, rather than as a genuine inquiry from a potential buyer. Every subsequent action or inaction from Arthur would be filtered through this lens, reinforcing the initial erroneous judgment. The cumulative effect of these biases is the experience of being ignored, rendered invisible, or treated with a condescension that, while not overtly hostile, is deeply disrespectful. It's a microaggression, a subtle slight that communicates a profound message. You don't belong here. You are not worthy of our time or attention. For Arthur, who knows his worth and his intentions, this experience is not just frustrating. It's a stark reminder of how deeply ingrained these judgments are in our societal fabric. It's a reminder that even in seemingly meritocratic environments, the superficial can often trump the substantive. Returning to our narrative, Arthur, still standing in the gleaming showroom, decides to take a more proactive approach. He spots a salesperson, a woman in her late 30s, named Sarah, who momentarily has no customers. She's adjusting her tie, looking vaguely bored. Arthur walks towards her, a polite smile on his face.
"Excuse me," he says, his voice calm and clear. "I'm interested in the X7 model, the one on the rotating platform." Sarah turns, her smile flickering into existence, but her eyes, as they sweep over Arthur's attire, betray a slight dip in enthusiasm. Her professional demeanor holds, but it feels thinner, less genuine than the one she offered to the couple in designer activewear earlier. "Ah, yes," she replies, a touch of practiced politeness in her voice, but it lacks the warmth and eager anticipation usually reserved for a high-value prospect. "The X7, it's quite a machine. Are you just browsing today, or—" Her voice trails off, subtly implying, "or are you actually serious?" Arthur maintains his composure. "I'm looking to buy. I've done my research, and I believe the X7 meets my needs. I'd like to discuss the specifications, potential configurations, and of course the pricing." Sarah's eyebrows raise almost imperceptibly. "Of course," she says, her tone still guarded. "It's a fantastic choice. The X7 starts at around $300,000 depending on the trim and optional packages. We have a few on the lot, but the one on the platform is our premier, fully loaded model." She doesn't offer to walk him over immediately, doesn't pull out a brochure with a flourish. Instead, she gestures vaguely in its direction. Her body language communicates a subtle reluctance, a perception that this interaction is likely to be a time sink rather than a genuine opportunity. Arthur nods. "Yes, I'm specifically interested in the premier fully loaded model, and I'm looking for immediate purchase. Do you have one available for a test drive, or at least one I can sit in and examine closely?" Now, a flicker of something shifts in Sarah's expression. "Immediate purchase?" she repeats, a hint of surprise in her voice. The words hang in the air, challenging her initial assessment, but the ingrained bias is strong. Her mind likely struggles to reconcile old clothes with immediate purchase of a $300,000 car. "Yes," Arthur confirms, his gaze steady. "I'm ready to finalize the deal today, provided the car meets my expectations." Sarah forces a more convincing smile. "Right. Well, let me just check the inventory for you. It's a very popular model." She turns to her computer, her movements a little stiff, a little less fluid than they might be for a client she genuinely believed was serious. She types for a moment, then glances back at Arthur. "It looks like we do have one available, similar to the one on the platform, if you'd like to see it. It's a gorgeous vehicle." Her tone is still not quite right, a little too tentative, a little too much like she's humoring him. This is a classic example of cognitive dissonance playing out in real time. Sarah's initial perception of Arthur, not a serious buyer, is clashing with his explicit statements, ready to buy the most expensive model immediately. Her brain is trying to resolve this conflict. Instead of immediately pivoting to full-throttle customer service, she's still operating with a degree of skepticism, a need to verify. This is confirmation bias at work. She's still looking for reasons to confirm her initial judgment, even in the face of contradictory evidence. Perhaps he's just dreaming. Perhaps he doesn't understand the price. Perhaps he's trying to impress someone. The possibilities of maintaining her initial comfortable bias are still explored, even if unconsciously. Arthur, sensing her lingering doubt, simply waits. He doesn't push, doesn't get defensive. He understands that changing someone's deeply ingrained perception takes more than a few words. It often takes undeniable proof. "Excellent," he says when she looks up from her screen. "Lead the way." Sarah, now feeling a slightly increased pressure, gestures for him to follow. As they walk towards the service area where the premium models are sometimes kept for detailing or customer inspection, she tries to make polite conversation, but it feels forced, a little disjointed. She asks about his current car, about what he's looking for in a new vehicle, the standard sales questions, but her tone suggests she's merely going through the motions rather than genuinely trying to understand his needs. Her questions are perfunctory, not probing.
This brings us to another subtle but critical aspect of discrimination, the dehumanization that can occur. When someone is stereotyped, they are often reduced to that stereotype, losing their individuality and complexity in the eyes of the person doing the judging. Arthur is not seen as Arthur, a unique individual with specific desires and financial capacity. He is seen as the guy in old clothes, a category that carries with it a host of negative assumptions. This makes genuine connection, empathy, and effective service virtually impossible. The salesperson isn't serving a person, they're serving a preconceived notion, and that notion dictates the quality of service. They reach the secluded section of the dealership. There, under brighter, more focused lights, sits the X7. It's a marvel of engineering and luxury, sleek and powerful, its dark metallic paint gleaming. Arthur approaches it slowly, his expression shifting from calm composure to one of genuine appreciation. He runs a hand lightly over the fender, his gaze taking in every detail. Sarah, standing a little distance away, watches him. For the first time, a hint of genuine curiosity, perhaps even a sliver of doubt about her initial judgment, begins to creep into her expression. Arthur opens the driver's side door and slides into the plush leather seat. He adjusts the steering wheel, touches the array of sophisticated controls on the dashboard, and takes a deep breath, savoring the scent of premium materials. He spends a good 10 minutes inside the car, exploring its features, testing its comfort, and familiarizing himself with its layout, all without saying much. Sarah, meanwhile, hovers, unsure whether to interject or simply observe. The silence is broken only by the occasional click of a button or the soft whir of an electronic component as Arthur investigates. Finally, he emerges, a thoughtful expression on his face. He turns to Sarah. "It's exactly what I'm looking for," he states, a decisive finality in his tone. "I'll take it." Sarah blinks. You'll take it?" The words catch in her throat. The casualness with which he is just committed to purchasing a vehicle that costs more than many people's homes is astounding. Her professional mask wavers for a moment, revealing genuine shock. The cognitive dissonance is now at its peak. Everything she thought she knew, everything her implicit biases told her, is being utterly demolished by this one simple statement. This moment is the pivot, the dramatic reveal that makes this story so compelling. It's the point where the cost of prejudice becomes painfully clear, not just for the individual discriminated against, but for the discriminator and the institution they represent. Sarah, who had previously allocated her attention and effort based on a flawed judgment, now faces the stark reality that she almost let a substantial commission slip through her fingers, all because she judged a book by its cover, or rather, a customer by their clothes. The feeling that washes over Sarah is likely a cocktail of emotions: embarrassment, regret, a frantic scramble to recalibrate her behavior, and perhaps even a touch of panic. She was dismissive, she was inattentive, and now she realizes the magnitude of her error. The sale is still within her grasp, but the foundation of trust and respect,
which should be paramount in any customer interaction, has been severely compromised. Yes, Arthur confirms, a faint, almost imperceptible smile on his lips. I am ready to complete the paperwork now. Cash payment if that's acceptable, or a wire transfer from my bank, whichever's faster. The phrase cash payment or wire transfer for such a substantial amount is often the ultimate signal of serious intent and financial capability, far more so than any designer label could convey. It's the final unequivocal piece of evidence that shatters any remaining vestiges of Sarah's bias. Her demeanor transforms instantly. The forced politeness gives way to genuine eagerness, perhaps even a touch of effusive apology in her tone. Cash? A wire transfer? Absolutely, sir. That's perfectly fine. We can process that immediately. Please follow me. We'll head to my office. Let me just get the keys and some paperwork ready for you. This is wonderful. You've made an excellent choice, truly. Her words tumble out, a stark contrast to her earlier hesitation. She is now practically tripping over herself to be helpful, to make amends for her earlier oversight.
As they walk back through the showroom, heading towards Sarah's private office, Arthur notices the glances of other salespeople. They've seen the shift in Sarah's energy, the sudden urgency and excitement. They might even have overheard fragments of the conversation. The whispers begin, the curious stares, the dawning realization that they too might have made a similar mistake. The manager, a stern-faced man named Mr. Henderson, who had observed Arthur earlier from his glass-walled office and likely dismissed him as a window shopper, now watches with a furrowed brow, a sense of unease starting to settle in. This moment of revelation is crucial for understanding the cost of prejudice to institutions. It's not just about an individual's feelings. It's about tangible losses, missed opportunities, and damaged reputation. Had Arthur been someone less confident, less resolute, or simply less patient, he might have walked out of Prestige Motors and taken his substantial business elsewhere, to a dealership where he felt respected from the outset. In that scenario, Prestige Motors would have lost a significant sale, and Sarah would have lost a substantial commission, all because of an unfounded judgment based on superficial criteria. The internal monologue of the salespeople, and even the manager at this point, would be a fascinating study. Regret, certainly. Self-reproach, hopefully. But also, perhaps, a defensive rationalization. He did look like he couldn't afford it. Who wears old clothes to buy a luxury car? These are the insidious ways bias tries to protect itself, even in the face of contradictory evidence. It's a difficult thing for the human ego to admit a mistake, especially one rooted in flawed judgment. Arthur sits in Sarah's office, which is surprisingly Spartan compared to the showroom. The air crackles with a new energy. Sarah, now fully engaged and apologetic, is all efficiency and charm. She expertly guides him through the sales agreement, meticulously explaining each clause, offering him refreshments, and ensuring every detail is to his satisfaction. She even throws in a complimentary detailing package and a year of premium maintenance, a gesture clearly aimed at making amends. Arthur, for his part, remains composed. He doesn't gloat, doesn't lecture. He simply observes, processes, and accepts the service he is now finally receiving. His quiet dignity, his unwavering self-assurance serves as a powerful, unspoken rebuke to the prejudice he encountered. He doesn't need to say, "I told you so." His actions speak volumes. The transaction is completed smoothly. The wire transfer is confirmed, the paperwork is signed. Arthur is now the proud owner of the most expensive car in the dealership, a vehicle he purchased with the same ease and quiet determination he displayed from the moment he walked through the doors. As he walks out to the delivery bay where his new X7 awaits, gleaming under the lights, a few other salespeople offer him belated, somewhat sheepish smiles and nods of congratulations. Mr. Henderson, the manager, approaches him directly, his face a mixture of professional congratulations and a subtle undertone of embarrassment. "Mr. Arthur," Mr. Henderson begins, extending a hand.
Congratulations on your purchase. An excellent choice. We pride ourselves on our exceptional vehicles and our customer service. There's a slight pause, a moment where the unspoken hangs in the air. I hope your experience here was satisfactory. Arthur shakes his hand firmly. The car is excellent, Mr. Henderson, truly, and the service, once it began, was efficient. His emphasis on once it began is subtle, but unmistakable. He doesn't need to elaborate. The message is clear. He turns towards his new car, the keys now in his hand. As he drives his magnificent new vehicle off the lot, the smooth hum of the engine a testament to its engineering, Arthur leaves behind a dealership grappling with the immediate aftermath of its collective bias. Sarah will likely reevaluate her approach, hopefully learning a valuable lesson about not judging customers by their appearance. The other salespeople will have witnessed a vivid demonstration of the financial cost of their assumptions. And Mr. Henderson will, one hopes, reflect on the culture of his establishment and whether it fosters an environment where all potential customers are treated with equal respect and attention, regardless of how they are dressed. This story, compelling as it is not an isolated incident. It's a microcosm of a much larger, more pervasive issue. Let's take a deeper dive into the societal implications and the various forms of prejudice and discrimination that this scenario illuminates.
Beyond implicit bias, we are dealing with stereotyping, which is a generalized belief about a particular group of people. In this case, the stereotype is that people who wear old or unassuming clothes do not possess significant wealth or purchasing power, especially for luxury goods. This stereotype is particularly strong in consumer environments where visual cues are often the primary basis for initial assessment. It's a superficial heuristic, a mental shortcut that can lead to profound misjudgments. Classism, as mentioned earlier, is a significant component here. It's discrimination based on social class. In many societies, there's an unspoken hierarchy, and wealth, or perceived wealth, often dictates how one is treated. This isn't just about financial status, it's about the cultural markers associated with different classes. Designer clothing, luxury accessories, and even specific modes of speech can act as signals of class, and those who don't exhibit these signals are often treated as lesser. This can lead to reduced opportunities, poorer service, and a general sense of being devalued. Arthur's experience is a textbook example of this, where his chosen attire, rather than his actual financial capability, dictated the initial level of service he received. The experience of being ignored or subtly dismissed, often referred to as a microaggression, has significant psychological impacts. While not as overtly harmful as blatant acts of racism or sexism, microaggressions, by their cumulative nature, can erode self-esteem, foster feelings of alienation, and contribute to chronic stress. For Arthur, who has the means to overcome this particular instance of discrimination, the impact might be fleeting annoyance. But for individuals who face similar microaggressions repeatedly in various aspects of their lives, in housing, employment, healthcare, and daily retail interactions, the cumulative effect can be profoundly damaging, reinforcing a sense of being an outsider or being perpetually undervalued. It chips away at one's sense of belonging and worth. Consider the ripple effect. A business that tolerates or inadvertently encourages such biased behavior not only loses potential sales, but also risks its reputation. In an age of instant communication and social media, a single negative customer experience, especially one rooted in discrimination, can spread rapidly and cause significant reputational damage. Customers increasingly value ethical treatment and inclusivity, and businesses that fail to uphold these standards risk alienating a wider customer base. Prestige Motors, had Arthur chosen to publicize his experience, could have faced a significant backlash. The cost of prejudice extends far beyond the immediate transaction. It touches brand perception, employee morale, and long-term customer loyalty. What about the broader societal context? How do we, as individuals and as a collective, contribute or challenge these biases? Firstly, awareness is the critical first step.
Recognizing that implicit biases exist, that we all possess them, and that they can influence our perceptions and behaviors is paramount. It's not about being good or bad. It's about being human and acknowledging the cognitive shortcuts our brains employ. Once we are aware, we can begin to consciously interrogate our initial judgments. When we see someone like Arthur, in unassuming clothes, walking into a luxury establishment, a conscious mind might pause and think, what assumptions am I making right now? Are these assumptions justified, or are they based on stereotypes? Secondly, empathy and perspective-taking are powerful tools. Trying to imagine the world from another person's point of view can help dismantle preconceived notions. If a salesperson were to consider that a customer's appearance might not reflect their true financial status or their intentions, they might approach the interaction with more openness and respect. What if Arthur had just come from a day of volunteering or working on a passion project that required practical attire? What if he deliberately chose to dress down to observe the true nature of customer service? These considerations can help broaden our perspective and challenge our initial, narrow interpretations. Thirdly, institutional changes and training are essential. Businesses, especially those in customer-facing roles, have a responsibility to train their employees to recognize and mitigate bias. This isn't just about avoiding discrimination. It's about providing excellent service to all potential customers. Training programs can help employees understand implicit bias, learn strategies for active listening, and develop protocols that ensure every customer is treated with a baseline level of respect and attention, regardless of their appearance, race, gender, or any other superficial characteristic. Role-playing scenarios, case studies like Arthur's, and open discussions about past mistakes can be incredibly effective in fostering a more inclusive and equitable service environment.
Consider the concept of blind processes, which are often used in hiring to reduce bias. While not perfectly applicable to a direct customer interaction, the spirit of a blind process can be adopted. This means striving to evaluate a customer's needs and potential based on their expressed intentions and questions, rather than on external markers. For a salesperson, this could mean treating every initial inquiry with the same level of professional curiosity and attentiveness, regardless of initial visual cues. It means giving everyone the benefit of the doubt, at least until their actual intentions or financial capabilities are genuinely assessed through respectful dialogue. The story of Arthur isn't just about a man buying a car. It's a fable for our times, highlighting the enduring relevance of the adage, "Don't judge a book by its cover." It serves as a potent reminder that true value, whether in a person or a potential customer, often lies beneath the surface, far beyond what immediate appearances might suggest. It challenges us to look deeper, to question our assumptions, and to cultivate a more discerning and empathetic approach to our interactions with others. It's a call to action, not just for salespeople or businesses, but for every individual to confront their own biases and strive for a more just and equitable world, one interaction at a time. Let's expand further on the psychological underpinnings of this phenomenon. The human brain is inherently lazy in an evolutionary sense. It seeks to conserve energy. Making complex, individualized assessments of every person we encounter takes a significant amount of cognitive effort. So our brains develop heuristics, mental shortcuts or rules of thumb, to quickly process information and make decisions. Stereotypes are a form of heuristic. They allow us to quickly categorize people and predict their behavior or characteristics based on group membership, even if that membership is merely perceived by superficial cues, like clothing. This efficiency comes at a cost, of course. These shortcuts are prone to error and can lead to unfair and discriminatory outcomes. The old clothes stereotype is particularly potent because it taps into deeply ingrained societal anxieties and aspirations related to material possessions, success, and even moral character.
We live in a world that often conflates material possessions with success, intelligence, and even moral character. This pervasive cultural narrative reinforces the bias against those who do not outwardly display markers of wealth. Furthermore, the concept of social categorization plays a huge role. We naturally categorize people into in-groups and out-groups. Our in-group consists of people we perceive as similar to ourselves, with whom we identify. Out-groups are those we perceive as different. We tend to view members of our in-group more favorably and members of out-groups with more suspicion or indifference. In the context of a luxury dealership, the in-group might be defined by those who dress a certain way, drive certain cars, or belong to a perceived socioeconomic class. Arthur, in his old clothes, is immediately placed in an out-group by the salespeople, making it easier to dismiss him. This us versus them mentality, even in its most subtle forms, can be a breeding ground for prejudice. The salespeople's behavior also demonstrates a lack of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence involves understanding and managing one's own emotions, and accurately perceiving and influencing the emotions of others. A salesperson with high emotional intelligence might notice Arthur's calm demeanor, his direct request, and his sustained interest in the X7, and infer that there's more to him than his clothes suggest. They might be able to look beyond the superficial and connect with Arthur on a human level, thereby bypassing their initial biases. However, when emotional intelligence is low, or when individuals are operating under extreme pressure, they're more likely to fall back on automatic, biased judgments. Let's also consider the role of social power dynamics. In many customer service interactions, particularly in high-end retail, there's an unspoken power dynamic. The salesperson holds the keys to the product or service, and the customer is seeking access. However, this dynamic is often reversed when the customer is perceived as high value. When the customer is perceived as low value, the salesperson retains the power, and this power can be subtly exerted through dismissiveness, indifference, or a lack of attention. Arthur's story is a powerful reversal of this dynamic, where the low-value customer ultimately demonstrates immense power, not through aggression, but through quiet, undeniable financial capability. This reversal is what makes the story so satisfying for many listeners, as it delivers a poetic justice to the prejudiced.
The salespeople's behavior also demonstrates a lack of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence involves understanding and managing one's own emotions and accurately perceiving and influencing the emotions of others. A salesperson with high emotional intelligence might notice Arthur's calm demeanor, his direct request, and his sustained interest in the X7, and infer that there's more to him than his clothes suggest. They might be able to look beyond the superficial and connect with Arthur on a human level, thereby bypassing their initial biases. However, when emotional intelligence is low, or when individuals are operating under extreme pressure, they are more likely to fall back on automatic biased judgments. Let's also consider the role of power dynamics. In many customer service interactions, particularly in high-end retail, there's an unspoken power dynamic. The salesperson holds the keys to the product or service, and the customer is seeking access. However, this dynamic is often reversed when the customer is perceived as high value. When the customer is perceived as low value, the salesperson retains the power, and this power can be subtly exerted through dismissiveness, indifference, or a lack of attention. Arthur's story is a powerful reversal of this dynamic, where the low-value customer ultimately demonstrates immense power, not through aggression, but through quiet, undeniable financial capability. This reversal is what makes the story so satisfying for many listeners, as it delivers a poetic justice to the prejudiced. The enduring appeal of this type of story lies in its ability to expose hypocrisy and challenge deeply ingrained societal norms. It taps into a universal desire for fairness and justice. Everyone, at some point, has felt underestimated or misjudged based on appearance, background, or some other superficial characteristic. Therefore, when Arthur triumphs, it's a vicarious victory for anyone who has ever faced similar slights. It's a moment of catharsis, a reaffirmation that true worth is not always visible on the surface. This narrative also serves as a potent reminder for entrepreneurs and business owners. The core lesson is clear. Every customer interaction is an opportunity, and every individual deserves respect. Creating a truly inclusive environment means actively dismantling barriers to service and ensuring that all employees understand the value of treating every person with dignity. It means moving beyond a transactional mindset to one that values human connection and long-term relationships. A business that focuses solely on superficial markers of wealth will inevitably miss out on valuable customers and limit its own growth potential. Think about the long-term impact on Arthur. While he made his purchase, the initial experience of being ignored likely left a sour taste. Even with the eventual excellent service, the memory of being dismissed persists. This can influence future purchasing decisions. Will Arthur return to Prestige Motors for his next luxury car or for servicing? Perhaps, if the subsequent service is truly exceptional and apologetic. But it's equally likely that he might seek out a dealership where he feels genuinely valued from the very first moment, where he doesn't have to prove his worth. Loyalty is built on trust and respect. And once that trust is initially broken by prejudice, it's incredibly difficult to fully restore. This brings us to the importance of organizational culture. Prejudice isn't just about individual salespeople. It can be deeply embedded in the culture of an organization. If a dealership implicitly or explicitly rewards salespeople for quickly identifying high-value clients based on appearance, or if there's a lack of accountability for biased behavior, then such incidents will continue to occur. A truly inclusive culture starts from the top, with leadership setting the tone and implementing policies that actively promote fairness, respect, and equal treatment for all customers. It requires ongoing training, regular feedback, and a commitment to addressing instances of bias whenever they arise. This story also subtly touches on the concept of passing. While often used in the context of race or gender, it can also apply to socioeconomic class. Arthur, by dressing in unassuming clothes, was essentially passing as someone of lower socioeconomic status, thereby revealing the underlying prejudices of the environment. Had he arrived in a designer suit, driving a luxury car, he would have passed as a high-value client and likely would have received immediate preferential treatment. His choice, whether intentional or not, stripped away the superficial layers and exposed the raw, unfiltered bias that exists beneath.
To truly combat prejudice and discrimination, we need to move beyond simply acknowledging its existence. We need to actively engage in self-reflection and systemic change. This involves 1. Challenging our own assumptions. Every time we encounter someone new, we should consciously ask ourselves, what assumptions am I making about this person? Where do these assumptions come from? Are they fair? 2. Educating ourselves. Learning about different forms of bias, their psychological roots, and their societal impacts is crucial. Resources on implicit bias, microaggressions, and systemic discrimination are readily available and incredibly valuable. 3. Advocating for change. Whether in our workplaces, communities, or social circles, we can speak up against discriminatory behavior, challenge biased policies, and promote inclusivity. 4. Practicing radical empathy. Actively seeking to understand the experiences and perspectives of those who are different from us can broaden our horizons and break down prejudiced barriers. 5. Focusing on substance over superficiality. In an increasingly image-driven world, consciously valuing character, competence, and genuine interaction over outward appearance or status markers can help us see individuals for who they truly are. The expensive car Arthur bought wasn't just a vehicle. It was a mirror, reflecting an uncomfortable truth about humanity back at those who were too quick to judge. And the lesson it delivered was priceless. Ultimately, the power of this narrative lies in its ability to provoke thought and encourage self-examination. It's not enough to simply enjoy the poetic justice of Arthur's triumph. We must internalize the underlying message. How many Arthurs do we encounter in our daily lives, in various contexts, whom we might dismiss or misjudge due to our own unconscious biases? How many opportunities, both personal and professional, do we miss because we fail to look beyond the surface? The enduring relevance of this story speaks volumes about the persistent nature of prejudice and discrimination. Despite progress in many areas of social justice, the subtle, insidious forms of bias, particularly those related to socioeconomic status and appearance, continue to permeate our interactions. They are harder to identify, harder to legislate against, and often harder to confront because they operate in the realm of the unspoken, the implied, the unconscious. Consider the potential ripple effect of Arthur's specific interaction on other customers. Imagine another customer, perhaps also feeling somewhat out of place, witnessing the initial dismissal of Arthur, and then the dramatic turnaround. That customer might take comfort in Arthur's eventual triumph, or they might feel a renewed sense of vigilance, understanding that they too might be subjected to similar scrutiny. It could also empower them to challenge unfair treatment if they experience it. Conversely, it might make them more self-conscious about their own appearance, feeling the pressure to conform to superficial expectations to ensure adequate service. The impact isn't singular. It's a complex web of reactions and reinforced perceptions. This narrative also highlights the concept of social proof and how it influences behavior. When the salespeople initially ignored Arthur, they might have been subtly influenced by each other's inaction. If one salesperson isn't approaching a customer, others might follow suit, subconsciously reinforcing the idea that this customer is not a priority. It's a herd mentality, where individual biases are amplified by collective behavior. However, when Arthur makes his purchase, he becomes a form of social proof himself. Proof that initial appearances can be deceiving, and that the out-group customer can in fact be the most valuable. This kind of undeniable evidence is often what's needed to shake deeply entrenched biases, at least temporarily.
The incident at Prestige Motors also serves as a valuable lesson in customer service excellence. True excellence in customer service means treating every person who walks through the door as a potential high-value client, simply because they have chosen to engage with your business. It means offering the same level of respect, attentiveness, and professionalism to everyone, irrespective of their perceived status. This isn't just an ethical imperative, it's a sound business strategy. You never know who holds the purchasing power, who might become a loyal customer, or who might recommend your business to others. By operating from a place of universal respect, businesses insulate themselves from the costly errors of bias and create a more positive, inclusive environment for everyone. Think about the various layers of old clothes that people wear in different contexts. It's not just literal clothing. It can be an accent, a name, a neighborhood, an educational background, an age, a disability, or any other characteristic that triggers a stereotype. The old clothes become a metaphor for any perceived deviation from a narrow, idealized norm, and the consequences of judgment based on these old clothes are remarkably consistent across different forms of discrimination. In conclusion, the story of Arthur and the luxury car dealership is more than just an entertaining anecdote. It is a powerful lens through which we can examine the pervasive and often subtle nature of prejudice and discrimination. It forces us to confront our own biases, to question the assumptions we make, and to recognize the profound impact that our judgments can have on others.
It's a call to cultivate greater awareness, empathy, and respect in all our interactions, reminding us that true worth and potential often lie hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be discovered by those willing to look beyond initial impressions. The cost of prejudice is immense, not just for the individuals who suffer from it, but for businesses and for society as a whole. By learning from stories like Arthur's, we can strive to build a more equitable and understanding world where every person is seen and valued for who they truly are. If this deep dive into prejudice and discrimination resonated with you, and you're interested in more discussions that challenge our perceptions and explore the complexities of human behavior, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us continue to create content that encourages critical thinking and promotes a more inclusive society. Don't forget to hit the like button and share this video with anyone who might benefit from this important conversation. What are your thoughts on Arthur's story? Have you ever experienced or witnessed similar forms of discrimination? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your insights are invaluable.